Hello everyone, I'm Metazoa with Arena Watch. You may have seen some of my work around Reddit, Metazoa's Meta Arena, or you may have seen me on Discord. I focus mainly on the arena aspect of the game, and I'm here to share my insights with you in the first episode of the Tactical Arena Guide, or TAG. Today's episode is going to focus on arena basics to get started, as well as team building and strategies. To start things off though, we have the number one rule of the arena, consistency. This means we'll aim for 100% chance or 0% chance in most of our situations, unless it is absolutely necessary to do otherwise. For instance, when you attack a unit with evasion, like Elena, we are going to assume, for the sake of consistency, that she will always evade your attacks, and that with her boosted crit rate, she will always crit on any of her attacks. This idea of consistency is applied to the opposite for you. If your Elena has the same amount of attack and evasion, we're going to assume your Elena instead has no evasion, since leaving these things up to chance loses us points, and arena is all about perfect scores. Now, for the arena basics. You have to build a team of units that are at or under certain weight requirements. Usually, these are 225, 240, or unlimited. The breakdown on the right here shows what those weights generally correlate to. Usually our Dark Lords, S++, will correlate to a 65 weight. Our S rank heroes, S+ units, will correlate to a 60 weight. S units at 50, A at 35, B at 25, C at 20, D at 15, E at 10, and F at 5. So compiling a team together from those weights ends up being one of the big challenges in bringing your box together to overcome other teams. And now for the point breakdown. As said previously, we want to hit perfect scores. So, you start off with a perfect score, and if you defeat the enemy team in 3 turns or less without having any of your units knocked out, you keep your perfect score. That being said, for every ally defeated, you lose 8 points, and for every extra round you go over 3, you lose 4 points. Extra rounds, of course, sound like a much better alternative to losing units, but be wary because extra rounds may end up costing you units if you take too long, causing your score to snowball and plummet. Now that the bare basics are covered, we'll talk about the 4 damage types of the game, these being physical, spells, martial, and breath. First up, physical units rely on the attack stat to deal damage, mitigated by their enemy's defense stats. They also need a high agility to ensure that their attacks hit. If the enemy doesn't have any evasion and your attack doesn't have an innate mischance, then having higher agility always results in a hit. Physical attacks can also crit, and when doing so, they ignore defense and deal increased damage, making them exceptionally potent for the arena. Next up, spell units rely on wisdom and potency modifiers from equipment to deal damage, and tend to be a bit slower and have less range than other units, but can have exceptionally high firepower. Spells can also crit, and when doing so, they inflict double damage. Martial and breath units function for the most part in a very similar fashion. The damage they deal is based off of their level rather than a single stat. They tend to have wide areas of effect and can hit multiple units at once, though their damage is frequently a bit lower than well-built physical and spell units. They excel with having higher than average HP and agility, however, allowing them to take priority when attacking, and the ability to take a hit or two if necessary. The main difference between these two, of course, is that martial attacks tend to hit a little bit harder, but can miss their attacks if the enemy has a higher agility, while breath attacks tend to hit very wide areas for less damage, but with no chances of missing. And now that we've covered the different damage types, let's talk about some strategies. Mostly, I have 3 of the main strategies here, which are aggro, otherwise known as blitz, control, and Voltron strategies. They're all very interesting, and I'll showcase some of the units that are used in each of them as well. First up, we'll talk about the aggro or blitz strategy. This strategy focuses on minimizing your damage taken while quickly clearing the arena and is one of the most popular strategies. This is mainly because it used to be a 2-turn arena without any health boost. So what that meant is you had to have high range, high agility, high damage units that could quickly clear out your opponent's team, or else you were losing points. You could not get that perfect 128. There was no room for setup, there was only room for damage. With the introduction of the 3-turn and with the 30% HP boost, we do have a lot more leeway with building now, and with focusing on different strategies, which has kind of allowed me to make this guide. So, typically what you see in this kind of strategy is you see a lot of those general pool bloomed units that are used to overlap a ton of consistent cleave damage. If you remember correctly, that is mostly martial and breath units. So what you'll do is you take a whole bunch of these, you put them right up to the front, and you just push damage as much as possible, trying to take down any physical units and any spell units in your way to make sure you can't get crit out. It works great because you can focus pretty much solely on agility and HP over any other stat, since you don't have a damage stat. Of course, I have some units here to showcase for you, like King She Slime, Marquis de Leon, Metal Dragon, Great Dragon, and Dolmagus, though he does also work with the control strategy that I'm going to talk about in a moment. Secondly, we have one of my favorite strategies, that is a control strategy. This focuses mainly on holding your team back and attempting to manipulate the enemy AI, as well as locking down enemy units that you can't immediately knock out, and punishing your enemies by making them waste their turns getting close to you. This focuses on slower units with high amounts of firepower mixed with units that have large amounts of control or debuff guarantees. That is, units that have a 50% plus debuff chance, as well as focusing those debuffs on enemies that are super weak to them. Like I said, we prefer to have the enemy run up, lock down, blow up. For control units, you can look at a lot of the debuffers like Dolmagus, Baramos, Venderghost, or like I said, pretty much any unit that can reach a 50% plus rate on a status that your enemy is super weak to. While for firepower, you want slower units that can scale their damage up very well without worrying about breaking any status effects, such as Zoma, Dragonlord, Spooky Valencia, and even Dragonlord's true form. Finally, we have a newer strategy that revolves typically around a couple of higher awake units, and that's the Voltron strategy. This is focused on buffing up 1 or 2 of your units to their maximum potential, then using those units to blow up the enemy team while the rest of your team supports those units. We call it the Voltron strategy because you are literally building up a giant Megazord to take out your enemies. For example, with some of the support units, you can look at Giulianti, who can increase attack for multiple units and double up as an attacker, Seraphi, who can, of course, increase attack for multiple units, while also providing some healing and stability. Schwartz Knight here is able to oomph a target with 2 stages of the attack buff, as well as providing some decent damage if you can get him in range for that crack wheel. For the types of physical units that you want to Voltron, you can look at popular units like Elena, who has that Crimson Spin, Nocturnus, who has that Pearly Gates, and Yangus, who has, once again, the Axes of Evil Spin, or even Rough Up, as well as the ability to increase his own tension, thereby adding an extra modifier on there. Those units all have a relatively innately high agility that you can add tons of attack to, and then burst down an enemy team on turn 2 when they can't really respond. And that covers the bare bones basics of the arena. Please like and subscribe so you can check out when the second episode drops soon. And a special thank you to the Arena Watch crew and Nocturne, who's been hounding me to finally record and get these videos set up, as well as making my really nice, cool thumbnail and getting me set up with a whole bunch of images so I can make these. Anyway, stay golden, everyone. Have a fun arena. I'll see you next time.